Namaskar. Welcome to part 2 of this video. The title of the video is J Sai Deepak on History, Identity in India. Without wasting any time, let's jump in. I'll give link to the original video in the description. Go and check it out. Give it a thumbs up. Come back and react with me. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Let's begin.
Complexion. We are fighting on who is an Aryan and who is a Dravidian, when there is a decent chance that as opposed to the Aryan invasion theory, you should be looking at out of India theory, that people left this place and went outside. Why is this important? Because people are asking for a Dravidian Nadu today. People are saying that 4 states in the south or 5 states in the south should form a separate country because they form part of the Dravidian language and the Dravidian culture, and they're not part of the larger Indian culture. That is the extent to which history is being used to drive a wedge between people. People who are saying that we may speak different languages, Veshbhusha alag ho sakta hai, everything can be different, but there is a common sutra that ties all of us, are being branded as right-wingers, as fascists, as people who are intent on thopifying one culture on everybody else. And those people who are saying, aap sab alag ho, आप एक दूसरे के साथ बात ही नहीं कर सकते हैं, and people who are giving, let's say, food and water to separatist ideologies are being pushed as people with a liberal bent of mind. So if anybody says that history does not play a role in any of these discussions, I'm sorry, I would genuinely call him a stupid fellow, because he's blind to what is happening right in front of him. Telangana's Telugu dialect is slightly different from Andhra's Telugu dialect. In fact, it's vastly different. For the simple reason that what you know as Telangana today was under the rule of the Nizam for the longest of time. And the Nizam was a representative of the Mughals in the Dakkan. Dakkan is crudely put Dakshin, which is what has become Dakkan and therefore Deccan. So, thanks to that, and Hyderabad at that point of time, if you read, you should read this beautiful book called The Last Nizam, was a melting pot of Yemenis, of Arabs, of Rohilla Pathans, of Turkeys, and people from all over the Middle East and the Central Asian countries in that particular place. As a consequence, the Telugu language in that particular part of the country is vastly different from the coastal Andhra areas. Coastal Andhra has managed to retain the purity of its language, whereas this has taken a lot of influences from outside. So you can call the Telangana Telugu as an upper branch, to put it in Hindi, of the actual form of Telugu. Now we are being told that
I see where this is going. Well, we'll get to
this Telangana Telugu is proof of the fact that there were 2 different communities altogether, and racial justifications are being created for why Telangana was always a separate entity historically from Andhra. This is how history is being used. You want to know more about history? Please read as to what is happening to the demographics in the Northeast thanks to illegal immigration. It will only tell you that over a point of time, a free living space will be created where the ratio and the demographic balance will be inverted altogether, and after a point of time, the third wave of separatism and the third round of partition will start in this country. Therefore, recontextualizing history is not a discussion that is meant for the educated elite sitting in air-conditioned rooms having wine or tea. It is meant for everyone to have a say in, because it is bound to affect you on a regular basis. The idea.
And this is what I like about J Sai Deepak and his other counterparts, that is Vikram Sampath, Ananda Ranganathan, and other historians and people who give constant commentary on these political stuff. It is that the discussion, the discourse of history, identity, politics, everything now has become mainstream because of these people. These people have brought on the discussions which was earlier used to be just a high class discussion between people who were sitting in air conditioned room and sipping their wine or tea, to our everyday conversations, to our dinner table in middle class families. They have mainstreamed the discussion of history which earlier used to be the monopoly of only the intellectuals. And this is why people are upset. They thought that they could manipulate history, they could create narratives and guide people in whichever way they wanted them to, now have suddenly become helpless. वो ये सोच रहे हैं कि अभी तक तो हम आसानी से सबको कंट्रोल कर रहे थे, But now everyone has become this critical thinker. Everyone has a brain for themselves. Everyone reads. Everyone has this vast access to knowledge, and everyone now suddenly seems to be thinking for themselves. So these people cannot digest that fact. And if I am forced to give an example, then Arundhati Roy comes to mind, because she used to like tell you how to think, she and people like her. But now you are thinking for yourself. So this has shifted the paradigm in a completely different direction than they would have anticipated.
Media of India has already undergone a grotesque change in the last 15 to 20 years. And it is undergoing an even more grotesque change right in front of our eyes on a daily basis. We are now being told that Kashmir had nothing to do with Indian culture at all. That the history of Kashmir and the language of Kashmir, the culture of Kashmir was always different and alien to that of India. So the Sharda Peeth had apparently nothing to do with India at all. So much so that the Kashmiri language is out on its way from Kashmir and it is being replaced by the national language of Pakistan.
Now, this is despite the fact that the name Kashmir itself comes from a Rishi Kashyap.
And the national language of Pakistan is not even Arabic, it's Urdu. It's funny. The central message that I am trying to put forth is kindly do not leave discussions on history only to the scholars or only to the experts or only to those who are in the business of influencing news or in creating news. You have a say in it. I don't know of this campus, but if you go to college campuses in Tamil Nadu or you go to college campuses in West Bengal, history plays an important role in isolation of people, in segregation of people, and in targeting of people based on language, caste, and whatnot. It starts at that level and it will continue to the topmost level. If you look at CBSE textbooks, CBSE textbooks start only from 1 CE or 1 AD, as if India did not have an existence before that. It repeats the same nonsense which Westerners have thrust on us. Aryans from Central Asia came on horseback 2500 years ago and they invaded the Indus Valley civilization and the Harappan civilization. And what you know as India today is the product of that rape, that butchery, that savagery, and that invasion. This is the nonsense that's being peddled. So if the government of India endorses this kind of untruth and this kind of historical distortion, foreigners are bound to latch onto it. Those who are interested in driving a wedge between Indians will certainly latch onto it. The next thing they'll say is that the Devanagari script is completely different from the script of the South. And since there is no bar on the top, it shows how fundamentally different we are as people. Therefore, a bar on the top of letters will decide that you and I are different entirely. That's going to decide the history of this country. Lack of historical sense and lack of identity is the reason that today Europe does not have an answer to the troubles that are facing it. There is a decent chance that 70% of the people in this audience might say, all I am interested is in vikas and development and nothing else. All I'm interested in is in increasing the livelihood and the standard of living of the people, and that's all. Europe has done it. Europe did it several years ago, but they don't have an answer to the identity crisis facing them today. इनके पास जवाब नहीं है कि इसको क्या करें, इस immigration के साथ कैसे deal करें, because they don't know who they are, because they think it is wrong on their part to say that we are Europeans of a different heritage altogether, that we subscribe to a different set of values. They feel ashamed about professing their different values because it has become politically incorrect.
Now the first world infrastructure is being taken over by third world immigrants.
What passes off as secularism in this country is called multiculturalism in Europe and United Kingdom. These are basically two different names of the same animal, the same jantu, the same creature, which is political correctness, which is meant to brush aside.
People are constantly worrying over this fact, and they are completely ranting कि जो secularism है India में, it's not actual secularism. So now you have it. You have the correct term. It's called political correctness.
Facts, suppress facts, relegated to the dustbin of history at the expense of history and at a huge cost to people. Development is important. Nobody doubts it. For the person on the street who struggles for 2 square meals a day, history gaya kude mein. because what he bothers about and what he cares about and what he should be bothered about is his livelihood on a daily basis. There is no doubting it. But then, here's the funny part. You go to any 5-star or 7-star hotel in Delhi, you'll find 6.5 feet tall, broad Sardar standing as the guard at the door. And then a white tourist decides to enter the place. You see a marked difference in his behavior immediately, wherein he bows down this namaste, and we treat this as Indian culture, this is our hospitality. Put yourself in the same shoes. Which European hotel or American hotel you've been to, where you get the same treatment from their bartenders and their waiters. The problem is, servility has become synonymous with service mentality. These are two different things. Being hospitable is not the same as becoming a slave to somebody else. But unfortunately, if you're repeatedly told that for generations together, you have been slaves, you will continue to be slaves, your entire value system is a bunch of humbug and a load of superstition, you're bound to think of yourself as people who deserve to be treated like slaves. Have you heard of any incidents against Arabs in Australia? Can an Arab student be killed the way an Indian student is killed in Australia? I don't think so. Because they believe, one, there will be repercussions if you touch them. That's one. Two, Indians hai. Humility is our central identity. That's our central feature. Humility, according to me, is the most misunderstood trait as far as Indian history is concerned. Humility simply means there could be someone better than me and recognizing the fact that there could be someone superior to me. But that does not translate to accepting that I'm inferior to everybody else. That is the definition of humility as far as India is concerned, and that repeats itself on a regular basis in the manner in which Indian history is projected. Do you know of the number of expansionist, let's say, wars or campaigns undertaken by the Cholas in the Southeast Asia? How many Chola kings are we aware of? Are we aware of the fact that it took 5 different armies of 5 different sultanates to destroy the Vijayanagara Empire? That it was an unequal war, and the rampage of Hampi went on for 6 months. It took several months for people to destroy one civilization or one empire, but all we hear is a tomb which
all we hear about is the result, is the consequence. कि end में तो defeat हो गए थे ना. So that is, nobody talks about it being unequal war. Now let me give you one scenario. What if one small kingdom is attacked by 5 big kingdoms, and still the smaller kingdom fights as much as they can and they die defending their place? Now who is the one which is more brave? Of course the smaller kingdom, right? But what has become now, अब लोग क्या बोलते हैं कि हार गए थे, they must be cowards, they were defeated, they were not very competent in defending their place. So this is how things are being manipulated to suit their narrative. So just remember, just because someone is defeated doesn't mean that they were cowards, that they were not brave. You have to take all the other variables into account.
which is built for somebody's second or third wife, and I suspect he had a wife after that, and one of his daughters also performed the role of a wife later. This is a fact. When Shah Jahan was imprisoned along with his daughter by Aurangzeb, there are written records which clearly say that his daughter effectively had to take up the role or don the mantle of a wife. And yet, that tomb is supposed to be the symbol of his love for his wife. Great, accepted. Is there nothing else worth showcasing in India? If you go to any country, even in America, the earliest that they can show is a structure running before about 300 or 400 years. 300, 400 years, I think there will be a temple in a village in this country, in every village. Most temples, at least in the south, are at least 2,500 years old or 2,000 years old. The reason why I have to talk about the south is most temples of the north have effectively, how do I put it, which anyway we can't talk about.
But we can. They were effectively destroyed by the Islamic invaders.
Be extremely politically incorrect. It could hurt a lot of sentiments. It could hurt so many sentiments that I will find a lot of death threats and hate mails coming to me the next day.
This is the level of political correctness that we have reached in this country कि victim अपनी बारे में नहीं बता सकता है, क्योंकि जो criminal है उसके sentiment hurt हो जाएंगे. So see the level of reverse engineering of the history that has been done. कोई किसी किसी के घर पे मर्डर हो जाए, उसके घर वाले जाके रिपोर्ट कराएं, वो बोले अरे अरे कुछ बोलो मत, क्रिमिनल्स के सेंटिमेंट हर्ट हो जाएंगे. So that is the level of political correctness.
So I'd rather not talk about it. But then, if you really want to read about it, please read Sri Sitaram Goyal's book, What Happened to Hindu Temples. He gives a detailed exposition of destruction by destruction, the number of temples that were destroyed. Read the books of Dharampal. Read the books of Sri Conrad Elst. Read the books of David Frawley. Read the books of Michel Danino. Read Max Muller. Max Muller is supposed to be the one who started the Aryan invasion theory. But then if you read his books and his teachings, in fact, there is a beautiful book, it's a short book that you get on Kindle, India, What It Can Teach Us. Just read it, it's barely
I have this book. I'll be reading it soon.
80 to 100 pages. A brilliant exposition of how he believes that there is not a single thought in the world that has not been thought of in India. And something that does not exist in India cannot exist elsewhere. That is a German saying. Not that a German saying makes it great, but then since we are fans of people who come out of India, I might as well put it that way. It has to make a difference. I wish I were a skin tone lighter. My
हमारी नहीं सुन रहे तो कम से कम गोरों की तो सुन लो.
statement would perhaps carry more weight. So, to cut a long story short, recontextualizing history is not about knowing certain facts, certain dates. It is first of all about understanding the value of history and then focusing on the facts. If the mind is not a fertile ground to receive facts because it does not see the value in receiving those facts, आप facts भरते जाइए, उससे क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? जब तक परसेप्शन और एटीट्यूड में कोई चेंज नहीं होगा, सत्य का उस पर कोई असर नहीं होगा, कोई प्रभाव नहीं पड़ेगा.
Very interesting video as always. All of his lectures are very interesting. They are very deep, and intellectually they are very deep. So just after listening to the lecture, you cannot come up with coherent thoughts which would complement all of his saying, which would complement all of his sayings. But one of the things that I noticed is that the history, the textbooks that are being taught in schools, and even now, even after 10 years, almost 10 years of this supposedly right-wing government, we are still being taught the Aryan invasion theory in history. And I think not only it should be stopped, the people who supposedly put it out there should be held liable, and they should be made, like some form of punishment should be given to them, because they contaminated whole generations of people who then went on to hate their own culture. And now if you look at, this invasion part is there, so it propagates a defeatist mindset like we talked about. But there is another aspect to it. If you go and explore the social reform section in history, then every social reform is about the Hindu community. That Hindu community did not need social reforms. Of course it did. In fact, Ambedkar fought tooth and nail for it, and that is why he was not happy with the current status of the constitution in 1950, and he wanted to introduce some Hindu reform bills. And when he was denied this opportunity, then he went on to burn the constitution. But he reached some satisfactory position later on when all of his Hindu reforms were passed in the form of Hindu code bill later on in piecemeal manner. But coming back to the current topic, it is that of course Hindu society needed reforms, but when you show only one side, only that the Hindu society only needs reforms, then this idea tend to form inside the young children कि हिंदू सोसाइटी में ही evils हैं और उसको ही सही करने की ज़रूरत थी, and everyone was hunky dory. No, there were no problems in any other culture or any other society. Now you have this defeatist mindset complemented with the social evils, and of course this will result in an inferiority complex, and if not an inferiority complex, then a hatred towards their own culture. So abhi when I meet people, when I talk to people who have come up from this supposedly English educated background, they say कि हम इतने ज़्यादा proud नहीं हैं of our Hindu credentials, of our civilizational credentials, because it is full of defeats, it is full of social evils, it is full of slavery. Like we have always been subjugated, we have nothing to feel proud about. And even if they find something that they are proud about, for example, you hear these theory के जब जब पूरा वर्ल्ड ये डिस्कस कर रहा था कि अर्थ फ्लैट है, वी ऑलरेडी न्यू दैट अर्थ वाज राउंड बिकॉज इन हिंदी फॉर द हिंदी वर्ड फॉर ज्योग्राफी इज भूगोल, दैट अर्थ इज राउंड. So even if you find certain facts which says कि our knowledge predates the whole European American consciousness combined, the new knowledge does not fill or does not fit well with their confirmational bias that they already have, so they tend to reject it. So this जो पीट पीट के मटके को बचपन से बना दिया गया है, अब वो वही रहेगा. So that is the kind of mindset we have, and I think the people who have done this, they have done this deliberately, and they should be held liable for it, because in my mind, from my perspective, they are criminals. So anyway, that went on a little bit. So thank you for being here till the very end. Please like the video, subscribe the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.